Hey everyone, this is Chris, and you're listening to One Cross Radio, and today we are rejoined by the fantastic and wonderful Pastor Hector Miray. Hector, how are you doing today, sir?
Doing good, man. Doing really good.
Awesome. Hector, for those who don't remember, is from Faith and Fandom. He finds God in geek culture. He is also a serving pastor at a church, does some excellent sermons. Two that I've heard recently that I'd really recommend is the one on Captain America that's available on the Faith and Fandom podcast, and the one from The Last Jedi that he did at his church is also on the Faith and Fandom podcast. Even if you're not that big of a fan of the movie itself, there are some great lessons there about not running from your failures. And I was listening to that the other day, and it was just like absolutely nailing me and just hitting me in all the right ways. So, Hector, thank you for that, and again, thank you for what you do. You and your whole team, it is wonderful. I was chatting about it with my friends from Cardboard Koinonia the other day, and they had someone on from Derek, I can't remember his last name, but the Geek Preacher on, and it was like, man, it's a good time to be into geekdom stuff if you're a Christian and have there be like evidence of godly people into it who can find God's word in it. So thank you, man.
Totally my pleasure. And yeah, that's one of the great things right now. It's a good time to be in this, I'm not going to say market, but the atmosphere of geeks and godliness at the same time. It's, just the swell of people doing things like this in the last couple of years has been pretty huge.
Yeah, and it's been awesome for I'd say for geeks and then like people like me, where I at times have difficulty reading, so I go towards a lot of comics and stuff where there's a great imagery around it, but then I'll find myself reading articles about comics and articles about movies. So then when there's people being like, look, there's also some really good, deep, godly stuff in there, whether or not they originally intended it, it's like, awesome. I can now reconcile my faith with it more and find stuff that enriches me and my walk more through that stuff. So it is a great time, as you said. So I do have some questions for you, my good man.
All right.
You've had a lot of stuff going on since we last talked. Namely, you've released 3 books since we last spoke.
Has it been... Okay, yeah.
Yeah, because we spoke in... we recorded in January. The podcast came out in February. And then right around the corner from that, Faith and Fandom Volume 5 was released. And thank you so much for that shout out. It was heartwarming. I was ecstatic. My wife was laughing at how joyous I was over it. She's like, be excited. This is awesome. But you're like a little kid right now. It's hilarious. So yeah, thank you for that. That was awesome. You've also released Faith and Fandom Junior, and then 10 Things I Learned from Sucking at Student Ministry, which is a wonderful book. I haven't read Faith and Fandom Junior. I have read Faith and Fandom Volume 5 and 10 Things I've Learned. Both are excellent books, so dear listener, you should check them out. And 10 Things I Learned Sucking at Student Ministry was excellent because it's applicable to people who are new to ministry, people who have never, or who are ministry vets, and even you can learn from it if you're not in ministry still. Those are great lessons that you can apply to other jobs. So what was the process like for each of those? Because there are 3 different books. And then what were some of the responses like, man?
I'll go with 5 first. 5 was really just for me. I don't know. I kind of get in this mindset. Usually, it's just the cyclical thing of come summer is con season for me. It's a lot of traveling. It's a lot of big shows. And so my goal is always to have a book ready for con season. And just because... And it's not even for the sake of even really having the book out as much as it is a lot of our cons have repeat people where there are people who show up year after year to the same shows. Like a lot of the shows in my area I've been going to for like a decade, and you run into the same people. You develop con family, or there'll even be people that see you for 2 or 3 years in a row before they'll ever even talk to you. And so it's like those guys are still here. And so I try to have something fresh for con season each year, just because if someone walks by my table and it's been a year since they've seen me and they already have everything on my table, they probably won't even stop. And so that's been kind of like the goal with that. Just it's to keep it fresh for that. But with 5, personally, I think 5 is my favorite one. But I don't know if I say that for everyone or not when it comes out. But 5 has been my favorite just because I feel like 5 has like the most solid mix of anime, sci-fi, superheroes, comic books, new and old. I feel like it's the most well-rounded book in some senses. But I was just really satisfied with it, really happy with how it turned out. But usually the process is I'll start taking notes as early as May or June, and of what's going through my heart or mind in that process, and I'll make notes. And whether they're video devotionals on the Facebook page or just a couple sentences in scripture in my journal. I keep a separate journal for Faith and Fandom just to make notes down. And so with that process, I'll do that, and I eventually will go back to look at my notes or look through the memes I posted throughout the year to see like what really hit me. And so that usually I'll take notes until like October or November, and then usually November or October to somewhere between October and February, I try and write the process out. And it's a good process. And you know, it's one of those frustrating things when you know you're coming towards the beginning of summer movie season and you're publishing a book, but you're about to miss the entire summer movie season, and people are gonna have to wait a year. Well, it's like I think Infinity War came out like the week after or something. I sent this to publication. I was like, oh no. But what's like with book 5, there's a Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 chapter in there that I'd already done as a church service at a Myrtle Beach, South Carolina Comic-Con, but I did it like last May, so it's been a little over a year.
Oh, nice.
So some of this stuff sits around for a year waiting to be in the book, and then some of it's literally like 30 seconds before I send it to the publisher to get ready. But it was a good process for that. And then with the student ministry book, it really hit me that this past year was the first year I wasn't over a student ministry since I was like 16. And I'd been over a student ministry for a long time in one capacity or another. And it really hit me with that. And then I was driving home from a Comic-Con in Wilmington, North Carolina, and just started thinking about it and thought it could be a good resource for others. And so I literally just turned on a microphone, like a text-to-speech situation while I was driving, and like spit out the 10 ideas of it, like just on that drive. I basically fleshed out the whole rough draft of the book, in my mind at least, on that drive home, and put it out for that purpose, just to help people in student ministry. And it's not discouraging. It's just one of those things that, you know, I took the last 5-6 years building a network around Faith and Fandom. This isn't a book for that. So it's like starting a new network. And because I'm also not actively in student ministry, it's like I don't really have that many places to put it right now. But I've had some churches adopt it. There's a church in Raleigh, North Carolina that's every student intern they have, it's required reading, and they have to write a process about it.
Nice.
And a lot of other churches I've seen pick it up, and so there's been a really good response to it. But and that's the other thing. I always feel bad for authors, especially independent authors, that don't have a Comic-Con-esque outlet, because if the success of Faith and Fandom depended on online sales, it wouldn't work. Because we have some people obviously that find us on the internet, and that they go from there, but the majority of readers are people that have walked by a Comic-Con booth and picked it up there. And so with the student ministry book, outside of a few church things and missions fairs, it's like not a lot of places to put it out. There are a lot of student ministry conferences, but it's like you gotta know certain people to get into those, to set up books. And then even in our area, there's a big Baptist state convention annual meeting thing that it's basically like a Comic-Con for old Baptist pastors. And I go to it every year because they give out cool free swag. But I tried to get a booth there this year. So in exploring that process, it was one, there's a waiting list that's like a year long. Two, it's $600 for a table, which the most expensive con I do is $300. So that's a lot. And then three, you're not allowed to sell anything. You can only put it out there for people to see it and maybe make orders after. Because Lifeway is the only one allowed to sell things at this conference. And I'm like, I can't mess with you. So it's just like, I can't do this. But it's a good process. It's a good resource. And honestly, I keep a couple copies of it behind the booth at Faith and Fandom at shows. And if I hear someone say, oh, I'm a youth pastor, blah, 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 I could use this for my student ministry, I'll pull that one out and just give it to them. Because, put it in good hands and resources. So I think that one was just more cathartic, less of a mission-driven goal with it than it is with Faith and Fandom. It was just something put out. And then just honestly with the junior one, and, for the record, the junior one doesn't have any new chapters. So it is just the books, the chapters from 1 through 5. But it's mainly all the PG down chapters. Because, even on my own criticism level, there's a lot of kid stuff in some of the books, but all the books aren't kid friendly in the sense, not that I'm dropping F-bombs in the chapters or anything, but just the fact that the source material isn't for kids. There are some of these Bible studies on Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad or stuff like that. Kids, one, they shouldn't know what that is, and two, even if they don't know what it is, that just means they're gonna have to skip over that chapter. And I wanted to put a volume together that an 8-year-old could pick it up and read the whole thing. That was kind of the gauge for what I put in there. I literally looked at the source material and I'm like, okay, will my 8-year-old get this reference? And so, there's My Little Pony and Power Rangers and Ninja Turtles and Moana and Kubo and the Two Strings, Big Hero 6. And then, there's some Last Jedi and some Batman and Wonder Woman and stuff like that. But it really was just more about making a volume that a kid could pick up and at least know what it's referenced. But because I'm fully aware that some of the nerd content of these books is way nerdier than the average nerd, and so they're grown adults that don't get all these references. So yeah, I just wanted to do one that an 8-year-old could pick up and read the whole way through.
That's awesome, man. And I love that even as you listed off some of those, I was just thinking it's really cool that you can take chapters that you can put in a book for 8-year-olds that they'll get, like Wonder Woman, Power Rangers, and stuff, where the Power Rangers one maybe go like, yeah, because Power Rangers is awesome. But then it's like, these are characters and franchises that appeal cross-generationally, and it's great that can be done. So, kudos.
Thanks.
So you actually answered my next question as you were talking about, because I was going to ask, when did the 10 things idea generate? But that was really cool. After doing that, do you think that you might start doing more kind of ministry or non-faith and fandom books, or?
Yeah. There's that idea. My wife and I have actually been kicking around an idea about a marriage book.
Nice.
Because I've married 73 couples. So I've done a lot of premarital counseling, and my wife and I do a lot of couples counseling and stuff on those levels, and it's one of those situations, just like with 10 things. We have a book outlined. It's there. It's just not typed up. And we already have like the titles and the chapters and everything. It's just we haven't committed to doing it. And but it's going to be called Together or Not at All. And it's based on a Doctor Who reference. It's not going to be a super nerdy book, but I'm not saying you won't come across some things. But like it's based on a line from Karen Gillan's character, Amy Pond, in season 7. I don't know, like episode 9 or 10. There's a episode called "The Angels Take Manhattan."
Yeah, it's the Pond's last episode.
The Pond's last episode, and unless you count the 12th generation, but I bet that was only one Pond.
Yeah. Rory wasn't there.
Rory wasn't there. He was on Broadchurch being a good pastor. But that line where, they have to basically kill themselves to save everyone. And the doctor runs out. He says, "What are you doing?" And Amy responds with "Changing the future. It's called marriage." And then as they jump off the building, they say "Together or Not at All." And like my wife had actually gotten me a kind of Gallifreyan looking wedding ring that had that inscribed on the inside.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so I was like, when that happened, it kind of put the idea in my head. And it might be a borderline Faith and Fandom-ish crossover type deal of like one of the chapters was going to be called 10 Points for Gryffindor. About make sure what you're doing is for your team, for your marriage, for your union. Because if you're doing the right thing, it's going to bring your marriage stronger. If you're doing the wrong thing, it's going to take away from it. So in the same way that you do think the wrong things for your house and Harry Potter, it's going to either affect you positively or negatively. So we have some stuff like that. A chapter about avoiding. It's a really obscure reference, but there's a Christian hip hop group called Social Club, or Social Club Misfits now, and they've got this ridiculous song called "Watch Out for the Pineapples." And it's a pineapple by Social Club standards are the people who get too close to you with ill intentions. So it could be stalkers. It could be people that are trying to get into the wrong place in your marriage, of like trying to alienate affection or trying to become a temptation. And it's this really dumb song. It's like, but they're, watch out for the pineapples. And it's silly, but we would have a chapter about that, about doing this thing. So that's the idea we've had, but in a like full disclosure, transparent discussion, the only reason we haven't put it out yet is because marriage is hard.
Yeah,
and every time we've gotten close to being ready to put out this book in something, our marriage sucks. And it's like, do I really want to put out a book on marriage if we suck at marriage right now? Or if marriage is really hard? And, if the book ever does come out, it's probably going to have a preface, hey, we might be divorced by the time you read this.
Oh, oh no.
And like that legit would be the preface, but it's like, we might be divorced by the time you read this, but we really hope not. And so that's one book, and then I kind of have a suspense-ish, maybe horror idea. That is the appropriate labeling of it, but it's one of those things that I would completely have to write under a pseudonym, just because I would never want it associated with Faith and Fandom or me. So, but I'm gonna leave the details there with that one. But that one's got a really fleshed out idea too. But that's obviously not for that whole crowd, and but I it's one of those things that I think could get me like lynched at the same time. So, yeah. But I've had those ideas, and honestly, the student ministry book is super small, comparatively speaking. It's a real quick read, and even doing that though was a lot of added pressure on as a writer trying to do both, and even more so is added pressure on my editor and the team putting it together, because we literally had about less than a 2-week turnaround from the time he put that book in my hands to the time I'm giving him book 5. And I was like, I handed him book 5. I was like, all right, Chief, you got 6 weeks. You got, or 2-3 months. I forgot what it was, but like, I gave him a rough draft of book 5 by the 1st of March, I think. And I even gave him a countdown. If you edit this many chapters a week, you'll be at this point, and this point, and this point. And my editor, Timmy, sadly has learned a lot of his ministry and life prowess from watching me. So he does too much. And he has too much going on, and he ends up trying to fit everything possible in. And then, it's one of those things where instead of breaking it down over a 3-month period, he's doing it in like a week and a half. And he was late by about 43 minutes sending it in by my deadline. So it's one of those things like, I have to realize that if I'm going to want continued effort, at least from the team I currently work with, I'm going to have to not overburden them. But on the flip side, if I'm not wrong, this will be the 5 will be the end of the cover theme that we've had kind of going across the first 5. And Vincent, who's my booth sidekick, the guy who does all of our art for our booth, like for prints and stuff, he had never really messed around with digital coloring or digital art or anything like. He's always a pencil and paint person, and so I told him the idea I wanted for the kids book, and he said, well, I'll work on learning how to do this digitally. And so he sketched it out in pencil and then did all the coloring and stuff on a computer and scanning it, and then the whole process of, it's too tall here, you've got to lower it here, and all these things. And so he got a good learning curve doing this book. So I'm pretty sure that he'll be better equipped to do it. But then also, I pitched the idea of the book cover to him exactly like it is now, because that's what I wanted. And instead of doing what I asked, he spent like a month doing this full-blown portrait that had a fully realized Maui, a fully realized Rainbow Dash, and so he put full-blown images of all these characters on the cover, and I'm like, bro, Disney will eat me. I was like, please don't do this. And and so he's like, oh yeah, copyrights. And I'm like, yeah.
Disney don't mess around with copyrights.
Especially not on their imagery. And I'm like, so I was like, he's like, oh yeah, so we had to start back over with that. But we do have a really great print though of what that could be. But so that was the process. And then just a funny thing I think you'd appreciate. The kids' book was the worst process as far as getting published.
Really?
Because, and you'd think it'd be the easiest, because all the stuff pre-existed. All I had to do was like boop boop boop, copy paste, and format it correctly. And that took me literally 2 days. So it wasn't like I put a year of my life into that. That was like 2 days of formatting. Everything was already edited. Everything was already done. I just had to type up an intro and outro and call it a day. The book got flagged in publication, and the process was shut down to the point where I wasn't allowed to finish the book because CreateSpace, my publisher, does an automated, let's say, filter that looks for plagiarism.
Oh no.
And so Faith and Fandom Jr. was shut down because I was stealing from the guy who makes Faith and Fandom. So I had to appeal the process. And you're not allowed to talk to that department because they don't want to be manipulated. So you have to send in legal proof of everything belonging to you and that you wrote these things. And I had to send publication dates and order numbers and my copyright license and all these things. And it ended up being the hardest process to publish a book I've ever experienced. And then we went through all of that process because this past weekend was Raleigh SuperCon. It's the biggest show I do. And I know my audience in that region at least, and they wanted that book. So it made it down to the flipping wire of the books were arriving about 8 hours before I had to leave.
Oh, man.
Like, down to the wire. Well, then I get the email tracking thing that they lost them. So the books were published. The books were printed. The books were put on a truck with the U.S. Postal Service and shipped from Charleston, South Carolina, which is seriously a 3-hour straight drive from point A to point B. Like, I could make that in 3 hours, and you don't even have to turn. It's on the same road. They lost it. Like, somewhere between point A and point B, and they have no flipping clue where these books are. They disappeared from the face of the earth to the point that my publisher is like, we don't know what happened. We'll send you more. Well, it's a 2-week shipping process. So I had one copy of that book for this show. And it was the one I had personally purchased on Amazon. Because it can get there in 2 days. So I put it on a shelf display, and then we had someone that literally wouldn't leave my booth until they had that one copy. So I sold my own personal copy, and I'm like, it's a little lived in. I've already flipped through it a bunch. But they wouldn't leave without it. So, yeah. But wait, there's more. You'd think if I did all the proving process to create Space, which is an Amazon company, that Amazon would be satisfied. No. Then when it came to Kindle, and I submitted the Kindle, it got flagged again.
Oh my gosh.
And I had to do the entire process over again just to put it on Kindle. And at that point, I'm like, you know what? I don't know if I even care enough to put this on Kindle. But I did it, and it happened. And, yeah. So it was a rough process, but it was, learning curve. I don't see myself doing a compilation book again for at least 5 years because I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah, no kidding, man. Well, and if they could have gotten you on the phone, if the process was slightly different, being like, I am the author, I did this, I'm not even plagiarizing myself, it could have cut this whole thing down. Oh my gosh, goodness. All right, so my next question was, and you kind of just alluded to it, you've had a very crazy busy season recently. You've been at camps. You've been at cons. You just had the big one on this past weekend. Sorry, that's my dog Luna demanding attention. Oh my gosh, puppy. So, what have been some of your highlights from this past season? Sorry, give me a sec. I'm going to have to let her out.
No problem.
All right.
No problem. But honestly, some of the highlights have been really all of the highlights usually boiled down to just the interaction with people. People are always the highlights of it, and usually it's what the book means to them or what it's done for them or things like that. That's usually the big win of it all. There's Heroes Con was a big one early around Father's Day, and the minute the doors opened at Heroes is, I can say that Heroes used to be the biggest Comic-Con in North Carolina, but the one this past weekend just killed it. But Heroes averages about 30,000 people over 3 days. It's the largest physical show I do. It takes up the most space. It has the most vendors, and and things like that. When Heroes opened up, day one, first day, within the first 5 minutes of the show, there was someone at my booth who had literally gotten early line admission and everything just to pick up the books. Literally, the only reason you would get in line early at Heroes Con is if there's a comic book writer or artist that you want to get in line first for. Because Heroes Con is the con you go to if you really care about comic books. It is not a pop culture show. It is not your typical Comic-Con. It is only comic books. So every major comic book writer in the world usually ends up at Heroes Con. Legendary people. So the fact that someone got in the early admission line with all those people just to pick up my stuff made me giggle. But it's the reality of just kind of that we have established a firm place in this. That as with this past weekend, and there was a lot of highlights from this. This was one of my best shows, general period, this past weekend. But one of the things that I saw was that they put the Finding God and Geek Culture panel at this big Comic-Con at 8:30 at night. The show ended at 8. And so I was like, when I first thought of that, I'm like, oh, I was a little wounded. I was like, man, am I so bad that you got to put me, after the show is over? But I didn't have the right perspective of it because they treat their evening hours like prime time. So they save all their big stuff for after the show is over so it can be fully attended.
Nice.
And I can say this, this show has more people this Comic-Con has more people attending it after the hours than most Comic-Cons have people attending it during. There were like 10,000 people in the building after the show was over. And so, like, you know, it's they put me in the lineup with some really, I'm not gonna say weird things, but things that I'm like, okay, didn't see myself ending up here. But like, so the Faith and Fandom panel was at 8:30. At 9:45, was a full-blown stage production of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, featuring 2 of the original cast members. So 2 of the original people from the movie were doing the production. And so I was the warm-up for that. And then on the other side of the building, while Rocky Horror was going on, there was a Queens of Combat female wrestling thing where they had a full-blown wrestling ring, and they did a 2-hour show, like WWE style, of wrestling. And then immediately following that was there was a dance party going on, like a full-blown dance party, DJ, thousands of people raving, and a burlesque nerd show.
What?
And so I'm like, okay, all right, why am I here? You know, but you know, the fact is, you know, we've kind of earned a place. Not that we've earned it. I'll say favor. We've ended up in a place where we have been put in some really favorable opportunities, and you know, it's really the fact that, you know, they put me in an 8:30 time slot, which I thought was ugly, and then it ended up being, I haven't done math on it, but I'm pretty sure it was one of my most attended or my most attended Faith and Fandom panel. So it's just kind of crazy. But then, you know, it's always the same thing. It's the people. It's the fact that the people, this matters to them. It's that we are put beside other artists that, you know, I'm always sandwiched between 2 other artists in Artist Alley. Doesn't matter the show, I'm usually sandwiched between 2 other artists, and 90% of the time they're people that aren't on our same belief structure, they aren't about the same way of life we are, and so, you know, they're stuck hearing me talk about Jesus for 3 days straight. And I guarantee that everyone at the booths beside me by the end of 3 days can tell you my whole spiel when someone walks up to the table. Because I remember my first year, I was beside a dude that made coasters. And I can tell you, it's made from this grade resin and heated to a temperature of this, and it can hold destruction, blah, blah, blah. I can tell you his whole coaster spiel by the end of day 2. And I guarantee these people hear me. But we also, you know, try and love on them and be kind to them to the point where, you know, we give Christianity a good name in comparison. But then, like, so we end up also becoming like family or the ministerial staff of a con, where, you know, we have people in Artist Alley that will pray with us, or that they'll come talk to us about their marriages, and sometimes it's not even Artist Alley. Like, I had a cosplayer that came to find me specifically to talk about some stress and anxiety she's been dealing with, and wanted me to pray with her. So it's things like that are still the highlights. But I got to again, favor of God. I don't even know how else to describe it. They put me right beside Tom King this weekend. And Tom King is currently the writer of Batman. Before that he did Vision. He's also doing Mr. Miracle. But Tom King is on issue 53 of a 100-issue series. And I can say wholeheartedly, he is the best Batman writer of my generation. I would say before that, Jeff Loeb. Before that, Scott Snyder. Grant Morrison was pretty decent. I was a fan of Grant Morrison, but Scott Snyder and Jeff Loeb were better. But Snyder, I'd say, was the closest equivalent. But this guy is the best Batman writer out there. And they put me right beside Tom King. And when I posted that I was beside him, some of my friends over at Geeks Under Grace, I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. Okay.
I found their website recently, and then I saw a bunch of articles they had written about Avatar: The Last Airbender, which, as soon as I started reading those, I'm like, I love that show. I need to revisit it. And now I hit up their website weekly.
Good. But I've worked with Geeks Under Grace before on a lot of things, and like one of their main dudes he said, I hope, he left on my Facebook that he hoped I would be a positive example of Christianity to him, because he had a negative response from Tom King at a show in regards to faith, and so like I went up, and there's a Wonder Woman and Batman story in book 5 of Faith and Fandom, and he wrote that. Well, he didn't write the Faith and Fandom part, but he wrote the story that it was based on, and so I took the 2 issues of that story and had him sign it. And so as he's signing, I'm like, look, man, this is my favorite story you've written. And he's like, really? Everyone hates this. And I'm like, no, this is my favorite one. And I go to tell him about how much it meant to me that he wrote a story about integrity and a story about faithfulness, and how much it meant to my 10-year-old daughter that Wonder Woman and Batman kept themselves pure in a situation they didn't have to. And, I told him all this stuff, and he's like, man, that made my day. And after he signed the comics, and I told him all, I was like, look, I write this series of essays on faith and geek culture, and I wrote one about this storyline. Would you mind signing a copy of this book for me? And he's like, you did what? So I told him about it, and I showed it to him, and he just sat there and looked at it, and like on the middle of the first page of that essay, it says, if you're not reading Tom King's Batman, you need to fix your life. And I showed it to him, and he signed it, you rock, and all this stuff at the top of it. He was generally kind of like taken back from it. And so then right when I'd walked away, he was leaving for the day. I was like, hey, I don't want to push this on you because I don't know where you are, and I don't know like if this is something offensive to you or anything, but I'd like to give you a copy if you'd be down for that. He's like, I'd like that. So I gave him a copy, and then I didn't really go to his booth a lot much more that weekend, just because obviously he's busy. But a lot of my friends were in line to get autographs because he was the most visited comic book writer there. One of my friends, 2 days later, snapped a picture behind his booth, and my book was with his stuff.
Nice.
And so they sent me a picture, and it's just really cool. There's a banner of Tom King with Catwoman art, and like right under it is a stack of comics in my book. And so that was cool. But it also, I had nightmares that I had gotten a cease and desist letter from DC Comics this morning. So, it's one of that's like, I legit was waking up, like reaching over to check my phone to make sure that wasn't real. But yeah, I mean, it's things like, it's the interactions with people that make it great. And that's it.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you for sharing those stories, and hopefully that'll... I don't know Tom King. I don't know him as a person, but hopefully through that story, the Lord will plant a seed or something. That'd be the most ideal.
Yeah, really.
So you actually just answered my next question.
Yes, I'm good at that.
You are. It's wonderful. So I'm actually going to jump ahead to the one after that. Since we last spoke in January/February, what have been some of your favorite movies? Because since then, I know the the biggest two, I think, have been Black Panther and Infinity War. We also had Ant-Man, but there's been a bunch of movies because it's no longer summer blockbuster season. It's a year-round blockbuster season. There was Deadpool 2 in there as well. And I think going by your Instagram, you've also seen Teen Titans Go to the movies, which I'm looking forward to seeing.
So, favorite movies that I'm browsing through 2018 movies right now. Wow, I didn't realize Infinity War was 2018. Yeah, I guess it was. So, Ready Player One. It's one of my all-time favorite books, and it means a lot to me personally. And I hated the movie on first viewing, to the point it made me sick. I walked out of the movie theater discouraged. But just because so much was changed, and it's like they took an 8-season series on Netflix and crammed it into an hour-and-a-half movie. I went back with it just to enjoy it without being the book. And honestly, like, it's very enjoyable as long as you're not trying to compare it to the book. So that one I didn't enjoy at first, but it became a big one for me. I enjoyed that a lot. My wife and I really enjoyed A Quiet Place. The John Krasinski film, Jim from The Office. But he wrote it, produced it, directed it, and starred in it with his wife. So that was really neat to see, just him make that vision a reality. Deadpool 2, the Juggernaut. That's all I'm saying. It's like, spoilers, sorry. A little late for that.
It's been out over a month, I think. Yeah. I think that's the at least that's my comfort point. Like, all right, it's been a month. Now it's on y'all. Like, we're talking about it.
Yeah, I give it 2 weeks generally, but they did the Juggernaut right, and that made me super happy. I'll also say this: the soundtrack was fantastic. I've DJ'd a bunch of weddings since then, and every wedding I've DJ'd since then has featured the Deadpool 2 soundtrack. Because In Your Eyes by Phil Collins, All Out of Love, Air Supply, a gorgeous acoustic version of Take On Me by Aha. And so, like, I've been using that nonstop at weddings and stuff. Let's see, Solo was okay. I wasn't wounded by Solo, but at the same time, I don't think I'd, buy it. I don't think I would. And I think maybe I bought Rogue One. I don't even know if I bought Rogue One. If I bought Rogue One, I haven't watched it. But it's, I don't know, it was good. But I don't know if I'd rewatch it a bunch. I saw it in theaters twice. And it was one of those things, when the day it came out, I was on a church pastor retreat. And I was like, and that was a condition. I was like, look, y'all, if you're going to have me out here on a Thursday night on this retreat, we have to watch Star Wars. It's like, because I'm a, if it's at all possible, opening night person. So I watched it with my staff. Well, after I watched it, I'm like, poop, I'm going to have to watch this with my kids. So it's like one of those things I would have skipped watching Solo a second time to have watched Deadpool 2 again. Incredibles 2 I enjoyed. It was a little more adult than I really was hoping for with my kids. But at the same time, the villain was also super predictable. And that was discouraging to me that it was that predictable out the gate. But they also had Saul Goodman from Breaking Bad as one of the main characters. So that made me laugh the whole time, just hearing him. And my favorite surprise part of the movie was the fact that the Underminer was such a beast. When the Underminer popped out, 14 years ago, I was like, oh man, this kid's corny. This is a lame villain. And then he actually beat the snot out of Mr. Incredible, and that made me happy. That's where it was at with that. Ant-Man and the Wasp was fun. I thought Black Panther was the most well done Marvel movie, but not the most entertaining. I would put it as the Marvel equivalent of Wonder Woman. That it's extremely well done. It's extremely well made. Great vision, great execution. It means a lot to different cultures of people that haven't been represented well. But if I want to watch a fun superhero movie, it ain't that. Like, I would watch a Guardians movie any day of the week over Black Panther for just the sheer popcorn value of it. But yeah, there's that. And I did Teen Titans Go to the movies was hilarious, and I don't think I've heard my wife laugh that much out loud in our adult life. She laughed at that way more than I did. But the great thing was, we went on 9 o'clock on a Sunday night, so that's not exactly kid movie time, and we were the only ones in the theater. And so we could be super loud, and my kids had the ball just yelling along with the movie and stuff. And I was like, it was the first time Superman started talking. I'm like, is that Nicolas Cage? Oh my gosh, they made Nicolas Cage Superman, and flip it out about little things like that. And the fact that Deathstroke in this movie is Batman from Lego Movie makes me
Will Arnett. Oh, good old Will Arnett.
Yeah, Will Arnett, man, he's a gem. And so that and Stan Lee, man. Stan Lee's an awesome person. And that was just, there's a lot to it. And there's a big post-credits reveal that actually will matter to a lot of people. There's a whole generation of people that are going to be really excited about the post-credit reveal. I'm not going to say anything, obviously, because, it's not that soon, but definitely, it was fun. Infinity War, I've only seen once.
Wow.
Right? I'll probably be hitting up a dollar theater to see that again. I was just like, it was discouraging. I mean, I get it. It's supposed to be a discouraging story, but I'm like, my daughter ugly cried for a hot minute. My oldest one, when she loves Gamora, and when they chucked Gamora off, she literally just laid down and ugly cried in the theater. And so dealing with that, I was just like, wow, this was not fun. So I think I was just simple it. I was like, this was not fun. I don't care. Yeah, but I'll probably watch it again. But yeah, that's some movie thoughts. I don't know. Yeah.
Hey, fair enough. Thank you for sharing those, man. The Infinity War surprised me the most because I was like, all right, he's probably seen it at least 2 or 3 times. But your feeling from that was kind of that's the feeling my wife and my family had when we saw Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. At the end, we were just like, that was rough. It was just like the dinosaurs in life or death captivity for the whole thing. Sorry, spoilers. For the whole movie. And we just got Luna a couple months ago, and we had to put one of Jill's parents' dogs down recently. So maybe it was just that, but come the end, we were like, the Brachiosaur scene in that movie made me tear. I was crying. I was like, oh, 6-year-old Chris just got kicked in the crotch. It's the first dinosaur we saw. And then just the life or death stuff the whole time, I was like, I'm good. I don't need to see that movie again. It was just rough. It was upsetting.
And then obviously the ending, I heard people at Comic-Con this weekend, that was a horrible life choice. What are they doing? But yeah.
Well, they need to go somewhere. It can't just be the island over and over again. Or we'll see what happens. But
well, they kind of did that in part 2, didn't they?
Well, yeah, it was riffing off and the marketing for this movie was ridiculous because it was 3 different trailers making it look like 3 different movies, and they had 17 new scenes in each. And then the movie was much better than it looked. But yeah, part of it was, we're going to take the T-Rex going to the mainland from the Lost World, but blow it up even more. So now there's all this stuff, which I didn't hate that. I was 10 when the Lost World came out. So it was like a T-Rex, like chasing cop cars away, I was all for that. 10-year-old me loved it. So last two questions, my good man. Any ongoing comic or manga titles or miniseries that you'd recommend?
All right. Okay, it's not either of those, but I'm gonna say watch DuckTales. I grew up with DuckTales. It was a thing for me, but man, this series is super well done. And they do a lot of throwbacks for old school fans, like they brought Darkwing Duck into it. But it's one of those things like the opening of one of the episodes shows all the Darkwing villains like committing a crime, and like you see Darkwing pop out, and I'm literally like freaking out and screaming at the TV. But then it just turns out they're watching a movie of Darkwing Duck, and I'm like, I hate all of you. But that was great. And then like Gizmo Duck is Lin-Manuel, the guy who wrote Hamilton, the guy who is he did all the music for Moana.
He was also Albie on House for like 3 episodes.
Okay, I didn't see that, but we know him from the Electric Company, like the PBS Kids show, where he would do like alphabet songs. And like our kids' favorite song from the Electric Company is "Silent E is a Ninja," and it's like Lin-Manuel crawling around through the city streets. "Silent E is a ninja," and like doing all that. So it was bananas. But Lin-Manuel plays Gizmo Duck. David Tennant, the Doctor, is Scrooge McDuck. Catherine Tate, Donna from Doctor Who, is one of the main villains.
Oh my gosh!
And I just met Catherine Tate this weekend.
Yeah, I saw that picture.
Yeah, all of that. DuckTales is great. My Hero Academia, manga and anime, totally worth watching. Love it. Tom King's Batman is fantastic. They just did a giant rickroll of they spent 2 years promoting that Batman and Catwoman were getting married. But Tom King says the entire 100-issue arc is going to be about Batman and Catwoman's love story, and this isn't over. But after they don't get married, nobody isn't really talking about it. But after they didn't get married, the next scene, the last page, shows every villain from the first 2 years of this book all together. And it's villains that have never worked together before, on a major level. And I was excited about it. And the writing is still great. So the writing for Tom King's Batman is awesome. I'm enjoying that. Mr. Miracle by Tom King has been good too. Those are my big ones. My kids and I get together each week to watch DuckTales and My Hero Academia, and Red Hood and the Outlaws has been great. And they're about to kill everything that the book is, and I'm not quite ready for that. But Red Hood and the Outlaws has had several iterations. They first started out like back in the day with it was Starfire and Roy Harper, Red Arrow, and it just wasn't that good. I'm a Jason Todd fan. Red Hood is my favorite, and it just wasn't that great. But what they've been doing is they have a Dark Trinity. Yeah, DC has their Trinity of Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. Well, Red Hood and the Outlaws was their Dark Batman as Red Hood, their Dark Superman as Bizarro, and their Dark Wonder Woman as Artemis. And man, it played out so well. But they're about to do this thing where I don't know if they're going to kill off Bizarro or they're going to do whatever. But it's going to end with Jason being ostracized. Batman's going to be against him now, and he is going to go ultra violent for a while. So, I'm sure it won't last that way forever, but they're about to take a sharp turn with it. So I'm interested to see what that plays out. And, When we talked before, did we talk about Judas? Did I mention Judas to you?
No, but I heard your podcast about it, which definitely got me interested in it.
And that would be one. It's only a 4-issue book, but they actually are releasing the whole thing in a trade format next month. So the whole that's one of the most interesting reads to me personally, encouraging wise and just a good discussion point. So yeah, those would be my recommendations.
Awesome, thank you, man. And then the final question is, how can we pray for you, dude?
We are, as a family, we've just been going through a really busy season, and we just need some rest. So that would be some good time of that. Like this is the one season where I don't have a major project where I'm working on. So normally this would be my season of rest. Like once I publish the Faith and Fandom book through the summer, it's just camps and stuff, and that's my time to breathe. But this summer we've been doing church construction. And so I've spent every day that I'm not out of state or something for the last 3 months doing construction. And so like we just haven't had rest. And to the point where my kids are hanging around construction sites, and it's just been exhausting. And prayer for that would be awesome, but just for what this new season is heading us into.
Yeah, definitely can do. And I'll be doing that. And dear listener, if you are a Christian and especially like a prayer warrior type, I struggle with words, please keep Hector and his family in your prayers with that request, especially for rest and heading into the new season. Also, listener, if you haven't had the chance to check out Hector's books or anything like that, you can find them on Amazon. They're available in Kindle and paperback. They are excellent books. I recommend all 5 of them, and the 10 Things I Learned from Sucking at Student Ministry book. They have a great online presence. You can find them on Facebook at Faith and Fandom. You can find them on Instagram at Faith and Fandom as well, and podcast on Podbean. And are you on any other networks, sir?
I think I'm on iTunes. It's one of those, I like doing our podcast, but I don't do a lot of checking and maintenance. Our feed was set up to go into iTunes and to Google Play, so a lot, as well as Podbean. So they should be there, and if they're not, at some point soon, I will check and make sure they are.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us again, man. It is always a pleasure to actually chat with you. I know we get to interact online a bit, but close to in person is always great. So thank you for taking that time out of your busy schedule, man.
No problem. I appreciate it.
Awesome. All right. Well, Hector, I hope you have a wonderful day. And dear listener, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and be sure to check out Faith and Fandom and pray for Pastor Hector and his wonderful family. Thanks for listening, and God bless, my friends. Take care.